The tropical sun rose high over the turquoise waters of the South China Sea. On this particular morning, a humble Philippine supply boat, the Uniza May 4, charted a familiar course toward a lonely, rusting hulk, the BRP Sierra Madre. Intentionally grounded decades ago on Second Thomas Shoal, the Sierra Madre serves as a makeshift military outpost for a small contingent of Filipino Marines. Their mission is simple: maintain a Philippine presence in these contested waters. But on this day, the journey was anything but simple. The air was thick with tension and the low thrum of much larger vessels. Looming on the horizon, the sleek gray hulls of the China Coast Guard. These were not small patrol boats, they were formidable ships. The radio crackled with warnings in both Chinese and English, ordering the Filipino boat to turn back. The Filipino crew, though vastly outmatched, held their course. They were supplying Marines who depended on food, water, and other essential supplies. Then the climax. A China Coast Guard vessel unleashed a powerful water cannon, a high-pressure jet aimed at the Philippine boat. The water struck with such force it shattered the windshield and caused minor injuries to crew members. The South China Sea is far more than just a large expanse of water. It is the world's most critical commercial artery. Imagine a colossal liquid highway through which a significant portion of global trade flows daily. An estimated 1/3 of all global shipping and over $3 trillion in trade value annually pass through its strategic lanes. It also carries the vast majority of regional energy supplies, oil and natural gas. Those fuels power East Asia's economies, China, Japan, and South Korea. Any disruption to ship movement would have catastrophic global effects. It would send shockwaves through supply chains and raise prices on shelves from Tokyo to Texas. Beneath the waves lies another treasure, tens of billions of barrels of oil and hundreds of trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. The sea is also a vital source of life and livelihood. It is one of the world's most productive fishing grounds, over 10% of global catch. Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, and other neighbors rely on fishing as a way of life. So the South China Sea matters on 3 levels: a non-negotiable commercial highway, a potential fossil fuel treasure chest, and a critical food source for millions. That mix of strategic, economic, and human stakes makes the region hotly contested. The stakes are high for everyone, from a local fisherman to a global superpower. The heart of the conflict lies in the overlapping and often irreconcilable territorial claims made by various nations. The most expansive and controversial of these is China's 9-dash line. This U-shaped demarcation, first appearing on Chinese maps in the 1940s, encompasses nearly 90% of the South China Sea. Beijing treats this line as a historical claim to sovereignty over the waters, islands, and resources within it. This claim, however, lacks a clear basis in modern international law, specifically the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, which defines maritime entitlements based on land features. China's insistence on this historical right basis puts it in direct opposition to the claims of all its maritime neighbors, Vietnam, the Philippines, and others. The Philippines asserts sovereignty over features within its 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, an area it calls the West Philippine Sea. This includes important locations like Reed Bank and Scarborough Shoal, traditional fishing grounds and potential resources. In 2013, Manila took its dispute to the Permanent Court of Arbitration. The court, in its landmark 2016 ruling, invalidated China's 9-dash line, stating it had no legal basis. China, however, rejected the ruling outright and continued to assert its claims through Coast Guard and maritime militia. Vietnam has deep historical claims over the Paracels and Spratlys. Colonial-era maps and historical administration factor into claims across the region. Malaysia, Brunei, and others also have overlapping EEZ claims, creating a complex web of disputes that complicates any united front. Taiwan maintains similar historical claims, adding another layer. Each nation views its claim as national sovereignty, historical right, and economic necessity, a web that resists easy reconciliation. The inability to reconcile these different interpretations of history and law is why the South China Sea remains a dangerous flashpoint. The United States, despite being located thousands of miles away, is a major player in the South China Sea drama. Officially, Washington takes no position on the sovereignty of the competing territorial claims themselves. However, it has an overriding national interest in upholding freedom of navigation and overflight. To assert this principle, the United States Navy regularly conducts Freedom of Navigation Operations, or FONOPs. American warships deliberately sail within 12 nautical mile limits without permission to challenge excessive claims. From Beijing's perspective, these are provocative maneuvers that violate its sovereignty and stoke tensions. Beyond law, the United States has a web of security alliances in the region. The Mutual Defense Treaty with the Philippines commits both nations to come to each other's aid in the event of an armed attack. American involvement acts as a deterrent and is a primary reason the Philippines feels more confident in pushing back against coercion. The United States' role is a mix of legal principle, military presence, and diplomatic commitment. This dynamic creates a tense strategic triangle, with the United States and China competing for influence. Regional countries like the Philippines are caught in the middle, trying to navigate great power competition. The result is a complex mix of reassurance for allies and increased strategic friction with China. The Philippines is, by virtue of its geography, at the very epicenter of the South China Sea disputes. Its western coast directly faces the contested waters. Its claimed exclusive economic zone is the site of some of the most intense standoffs. Unlike distant powers, the Philippines experiences the conflict as an immediate threat to sovereignty and economic security. It cannot simply ignore the issue. It is at its doorstep. This central position makes the Philippines a crucial pivot point, and for the United States, a strong and resolute Philippines is a critical component of regional strategy. Under the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, the archipelago offers U.S. forces access to key military bases, allowing rapid projection of power. For China, a compliant Philippines would be a strategic victory. The burden on the Philippines is immense. It must perform a delicate and often precarious balancing act. On one hand, it needs to stand firm on its legal rights. On the other, it must manage its relationship with China, its largest trading partner. Overly confrontational moves could risk severe economic retaliation. This strategic dilemma has led to shifts in Philippine foreign policy over the years. The current administration has adopted assertive transparency, publicizing incidents to rally domestic and international support. Framing the conflict as David versus Goliath, the Philippines leverages its position to influence the regional outcome. Away from high-level diplomatic meetings and naval calculations, the conflict has a profound and painful human cost. That cost is borne most heavily by ordinary Filipino fishermen. For generations they have sailed to traditional fishing grounds like Scarborough Shoal, known locally as Bajo de Masinloc. These areas were once bountiful, providing enough catch to feed families and support coastal communities. Today these waters have become zones of exclusion, patrolled by imposing Chinese vessels that chase them away, often with intimidating maneuvers and water cannon. Consider the story of a fisherman from Zambales province. He recalls a time when a single trip could secure his family's income for weeks. Now he describes constant fear and humiliation, being blocked by large Coast Guard ships, shouted at through loudspeakers to leave his own country's waters. Sometimes maritime militia in smaller boats cut his nets or seize his catch. He is forced to fish in less productive waters closer to shore. His income has plummeted. The ripple effect hits boat builders, ice suppliers, transport workers, market vendors, hollowing out whole communities. Young people leave for cities, communities erode, and the psychological toll, a sense of injustice and powerlessness, is profound. Their stories are a poignant testament to the real-world consequences of geopolitical conflict. The escalating tensions and the clear pattern of coercion have not gone unnoticed by the international community. In response, a growing number of countries are sending warships to the region. This has created an international flotilla, not a unified fleet but a collection of national navies signaling commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. The United States Navy remains the most prominent presence. It is increasingly being joined by key allies, Australia, Japan, France, and the United Kingdom. They provide patrol vessels, equipment, and training to help the Philippines monitor its waters. Several European powers have also increased their naval presence, the UK, France, Germany, smaller material contributions but powerful symbolic signals. It signals that freedom of the seas is a global issue, but the gathering of warships is a double-edged sword. It creates a counterbalance yet raises the risk of miscalculation. So many warships close together increase the potential for accidents or escalation. The crowded waters are a tinderbox. The presence of international ships is both deterrent and potential spark. A single spark could ignite a global crisis. Their naval deployments are a physical manifestation of commitment to a rules-based order. but they must be managed carefully to avoid catastrophe. The world is watching. Despite the ominous presence of warships and heated rhetoric, the path to a lasting peace is not entirely closed. The most promising framework lies in diplomacy and a shared commitment to international law. The cornerstone is UNCLOS. A practical step is a legally binding code of conduct between China and ASEAN, long negotiated but painfully slow. There are deep disagreements about enforcement and scope. A good code would set clear rules of engagement, create de-escalation mechanisms and crisis hotlines to prevent accidents. It could provide frameworks for joint management of fisheries, hydrocarbons and shared development, turning conflict zones into cooperation zones. Regional countries can strengthen Coast Guard and maritime domain awareness to document activities and bolster legal cases. Speaking with a unified ASEAN voice increases diplomatic leverage. Joint development of resources, collaborative marine science and environmental protection can build trust and mutual benefits. If states focus on practical cooperation and rules, the South China Sea could slowly transform from an arena of confrontation into a sea of peace and prosperity. Patience, law and diplomacy, not force, are the path forward. The waters lapping at the shores of the Philippines are now a global stage where the future of international order is being contested. The swarm of warships is not the cause but a symptom of a deeper struggle. It is a struggle over resources, sovereignty, and the rules that govern nations. From Second Thomas Shoal to displaced fishermen, the issue is multi-layered. It spans grand strategy and human tragedy, how to defend national rights in the face of overwhelming power. The importance of the South China Sea to global trade makes it a matter of concern for every trading nation on Earth. Countries from North America, Europe, and the region are making their presence felt, a physical manifestation of commitment to a rules-based system. Their deployments are a symbol. Freedom of the seas is a collective responsibility. For the Philippines, its geography is both a burden and an opportunity, a pivot point with strategic importance. By leveraging alliances, championing international law, and publicizing facts, Manila focuses global attention on the issue. The real reason warships are swarming the Philippines is to contest the future. The challenge is to ensure that future is one of shared stability and mutual respect. If nations choose diplomacy, law, and practical cooperation, the South China Sea can become a bridge for cooperation, not a battlefield.